Well, I do have agents on my team sometimes that will go back and look at stuff if they can't be here in person. So let's go ahead and invite the Lord to be with us. Father God, we're just grateful that you allow us to make a living, that we can provide for our families, Lord. We ask that you'll bless our businesses and help us to not just provide, but also be mindful to give back to those in need and do things that will expand your kingdom, Lord. And bless our speakers today and guide their words, and let our time together be prosperous, Lord. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So we've got two speakers today. Patrick with Chesmar Homes will just have about a 10-minute quick briefing for us. And there's lots of things going on in the home builder arena right now that I'm sure you'll share. It's a different, interesting time. And then we've got my good friend John Turner with A&W Root Beer. I'm just kidding. A&W Survey. You have to tell me sometime how y'all got your name on that.
Okay.
But he'll be sharing some things that I think will be useful to us, because obviously surveys are a big part of what we do. And I don't know about y'all, but I have certainly gotten twisted and turned around a few times with some funky survey situations. So I think that'll be useful for us. So with that, Patrick, we'll let you have it here the next 10 minutes.
Cool. Well, thanks, Bruce, for having me on. So I'm Patrick with Chesmar Homes. I'm out in Park Trails, which is on the north side of 80 here in Forney. And we just opened up our fourth phase. And so, Sharon, I don't know if you can show that PowerPoint, but I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights the best I can. But while she's pulling that up, so in the builder world and new construction, so it kind of depends. We were just doing spec homes, but we're kind of doing a blend now. So I do have some inventory homes. I've got 5 of those at the current time. But if somebody is wanting to personalize the interior, I also have those as well. So they want to choose the colors and their countertops and the flooring. The only thing I can't change would be the exterior options, the floor plan, and the color. So the brick and the stone and whatever the floor plan has to stay. But if they want to choose the interior, they can. If they don't, we also have a professional designer that will choose all the colors for them. So we can kind of do it either way. So that's kind of where we are. So these are just a couple of pictures of Park Trails. So when you come in the entrance, you've got that lake entry there, and you can actually fish in that lake that's right there on the entry. And then in the next slide, it will just be kind of what the map is. So back over towards the right is the old section, and that's where my model still is. And so all of my new homes are going to be off of Longhorn Lane. Ranch Road is kind of the back entrance, but the front entrance is right off of Ridgecrest Road. So one of the best things about my community is its location. So there's a couple of communities that are really close to me. The biggest one I'm sure everyone has heard of is Devonshire. So they're just right down the street from me.
Appointment today.
The problem with Devonshire is that there's only one way in and one way out on the back and the front. In the front, you have to come in off of 548, and it is a nightmare. So I have people that come in all the time that have lived there for a couple of years, and they just can't stand. It takes them, 20 to 30 minutes just to get out of their development. So I would say that's one of the biggest draws of Park Trails is easy access to get in and off. So if you go to the next slide, please. So Park Trails, so I already kind of talked about the great location. We don't have any mud or PID taxes here, so there's no special assessments. That's another huge difference between us and Devonshire. I do have plans with 3-car garages available. These are all oversized home sites, so they're all at least 65 to 70 feet wide. The minimum depth is about 130. So you've got a nice big size backyard. You're not going to be too close to your neighbors, which is a huge difference between mine and just lots of other neighboring communities. The amenities, they're not the huge, welcome to Disneyland Park that you will see in some master plan stuff. We do have a nice private community pool. There is a nice community park, and there's tons of walking, hike, and bike trails. But the HOA dues for the year are $350, which is really, really cheap. And since you don't have the mud and PID, it's a cheaper place to be. So the rest of that stuff is pretty self-explanatory. So if you go to the next one. So my model is the Trenton model. It is a 2912 square foot 1-story. It's one of the bigger 1-stories that you will find. It's 55 foot from wall to wall. So when you stand in the dining room and you look across to the other side, you get a really good vantage point of how big that home is. Since it's such a huge pad, it takes an oversized lot. So the one that I have that's coming up on Chaco, that lot is actually 85 foot wide by 135 feet deep. So you still get a nice sized backyard. You get plenty of side yard as well. So they only put the Trenton on a couple of lots to where it actually makes sense. So when you come in and see the model, it's beautiful. And I've got just a couple of photos that you'll see here. If you go to the next slide. So this is just showing you kind of what the floor plan is. It is a 3-car garage tandem. I'm sure y'all know what that is. So you have your 2 daily drivers and you can park 1 car behind it. Other people will use it just for covered storage, so they don't have to put a storage shed out in the back. But it is a 4-bed, 3.5 bath. It has a game room as well as a study. So it has pretty much everything people are looking for. Everything in this home is oversized. So all the bedrooms are really big. They're really spacious. The closets are really big. The master bedroom closet, as you can see, it's got a huge walk-in closet. So you can literally go in there. If you were wearing your, really big formal dress, you could spin around if you want to. That's what I do when I have people that come out, and I don't have a dress on, but I just do the spin around and just show how big that closet is. So people really, really love that. Haven't had anybody that comes in and goes, geez, I wish it was smaller. So that's a really great thing. The next one is a picture. You can kind of get an idea of what is one of the big selling points. So this is the kitchen. It has a double island setup. We're about the only production builder that you will find with a square foot plan of 3,000 square feet and under that's going to have a double island. So people that have big families that love to entertain or that have family over a lot, the double island setup is awesome because it gives you a ton of counter space. As you can see, there's bar stools on the one side. You can fit the same amount of bar stools on the other one. So you can easily seat 25 to 30 people in the kitchen and it wouldn't even bother you. You can also see sort of all the cabinets. There's a ton of storage. It's got a nice size walk-in closet. The utility is huge. So it's really a beautiful plan. Next slide. This is just another vantage point. So you can see this is from the living room looking towards the front door. It's got vaulted 16-foot ceilings. Back towards the kind of the right is the game room. So when you come in, the game room is off to the right-hand side. It doesn't come with doors, but a lot of times, it comes with doors. So a lot of times people will use it as a media room also. So if you just get the blackout curtains for the windows, you can double it for that way. A lot of guys that come in here, they want to use it for their man cave. So it's kind of tucked away. It just gives you a lot of versatility. Next slide. So this is the outdoor patio. All of my plans are going to come with an outdoor covered patio included. This is the one for the Trenton. It's about 15 to 18 feet, I think, wide from wall to wall there. So it's a nice big size patio. The fan comes with it as well, just not the furniture. Next slide, please. So these are the 5 homes that I have that are in inventory. So they've all been started. They're all framed. They're all roofed. Now, these are the prices for it. They range from $522 to $603. The base prices are lower. So like I mentioned earlier at the beginning, if somebody wants to personalize theirs, if they want to stay with the more standard choices, then the price range would be from $491 to $563. So if you have somebody that, just doesn't want to go over the 500,000 mark, we've got some of those as well. It just depends on which way they want to go. Next slide. So this is just a picture of the pool. So this is one of the amenities that we have. It's a nice private pool. Next one. And I think these are just kind of a couple photos. Next one, please. So this is just a vantage point. So it's got all the hike and bike trails. It's got a nice view. Next one, please. Just trying to make sure I don't go over my time. Okay, and then the next one, which is the last one, which I think is an awesome thing. So I was able to talk with my boss. So since Bruce and your company were nice enough to let me come and speak, for any home, it doesn't have to be one of the spec homes, but for any one of the homes, for the grand opening special for your company only, if somebody comes and contracts within the next, he said 30 days, I bet I could stretch it to 45. Just don't tell him I said that. But between 30 and 45 days, it'll be an additional $2,000 realtor bonus that will be paid by us. So in addition to the realtor commission that we give, it'll be an additional $2,000 that you guys can pocket. So,
well, I know who's going to be our speaker the next couple of weeks.
Hey, I'm ready anytime you want. So in addition to
Very
that,
nice.
though, for your buyers for the grand opening special, our normal incentive that we have is $10,000 for the buyer in closing costs. For the grand opening special, it's $20,000, and they can use it for closing costs. They can also use it to buy down the rate. So as much as the rates have been fluctuating lately, they can use that to buy down their rate, and then they can lock that rate in for, I think the biggest one they have is up to 12 months. And some of it, you might have to put a little bit of the cost up front, but you could at least lock that rate in depending on when that house is going to be done. So hopefully you guys will come out and see me. I try to be a really nice guy. I've got cold drinks. I've got candy and treats. So please bring some people my way. I'd love to see you.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for a great presentation. Anybody have any quick questions before we move on?
I'm very impressed. Very impressed with what they're offering, and the pool area and the trails and the little fishing pond. I love seeing the ducks that cross the road there. I have to be careful not to squish them. But they're so cute when mom and all her babies come across the nice area. Love that there's no mud and mud. And I guess I could get my words right. Mud and PID tax. That's huge here in Forney, guys. It's huge. It makes a big difference for your people. So,
Absolutely.
sorry I got stuck by the train this morning. I apologize, but you did a great presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, Patrick, let's be in touch. We're looking forward to working with you in the future.
Awesome. And if Sharon, if you will send that PowerPoint to everybody so they have that information, just know that $2,000 bonus is just for y'all. So if you show it to somebody else, they've got to be with your company. So tell them too bad, too sad. They missed out.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Patrick.
you guys so much. Appreciate it.
I want to welcome Hugo, who's jumped on board with us. Good to have you, Hugo, today. Before I introduce our main speaker, I want to just mention that we've got our broker, Sharon Schill, with us, our managing partner, Kim Bigley. Do y'all want to say anything before we get started?
Oh, just a reminder that if you're creating new advertising, be sure to send it to your team leader for approval, to make sure we're kind of, getting things, doing things right. So
I'd like to say just a little bit. This is short. I'll make it short. We have the new logo, which most of you have. Katie sent it out for use. There are some extra creating pieces to that, and we're working on getting that in a JPEG format. So it'll be easier to use. It was pretty hard to download. So we're working on that now. I'm going to go ahead and share. Bruce, Sarah, and y'all breathing. I'm going to go ahead and share. We are in heavy negotiations on a new website for the company. We're really excited about it. It's going to be fresh. It's going to be bright. It's going to show all of our listings. It's going to have a search for your people so that they can look and see, not just like Zillow. You don't see active, pending, and sold on Zillow regularly like you should, and you're supposed to. This will be current to IDX or MLS. So we've got some exciting things. Just wanted to share a brief little sneak peek. Okay.
No, I'm glad you did. And I was just going to say also, we had a real productive meeting with the owners yesterday, and lots of good things, I think, coming down the pike, and just a lot of talk about the future of where we're going, what the vision is. Real exciting. So I'm glad you shared that. Good things happening.
So get through all of the negotiations with it, but we thought we had it, and then we didn't like it, so we're meeting again today with a different company. So we're going to get the right one. It's going to be best for us.
And Kim, I was told by Kurt yesterday that he's working on that. We're trying to have something here in the next 3 or 4 days. So
that's perfect.
All right.
That's
so
exciting.
our speaker today, I've known for a long time. I call him JT. We all call him JT that know him well, but John Turner, I got to know him years ago, not through the business aspect, but I was a minister that had a little ministry at a place called Allenhurst Apartments, and we expanded that to a place called Peachtree Apartments about, 15 years ago. And we had a lot of kids that we worked with, a lot of youth that we worked with, and JT, who at that time was from Highland Oaks Church of Christ, came in and helped us for a few years and worked with the youth, mentored the youth, really worked in a youth minister type role. Did a tremendous job for us. And at that time, I knew he was a surveyor. Didn't really think back then how that would ever apply to my life that much, but it certainly does today. And I'll tell you, just recently, 2 agents on my team were in a real tight situation where there was a mix-up with the Tyler company. The survey did not get ordered. We were closing in 2 days. And I called John. I said, man, I need a miracle. Can you make it work? He said, I will do everything I can. And make a long story short, within those 2 days, they got that survey done. It wasn't a small survey either. And they got it done. We closed on time. Thank you, John. So with that, I thought it'd be good to have a surveyor come out. I don't know about y'all, but from time to time, I've had some funky, crazy situations with surveys. And the longer you're in this business, the more you realize how critical the work that they do has to do with us providing the best service for our clients. So with that, John, take it away.
All right. Well, can you all hear me okay? Okay, good deal. So generally, it's my first time ever doing a Zoom. I've spoken in front of groups before, but never done a Zoom. Mac Brown, I listened to him one time and he said, stand tall to be seen, speak loud to be heard, and be brief to be appreciated. Well, I don't have to worry about that standing tall if we're on Zoom, but I'll be as brief. So
it's a different time.
Different time. So the way surveying plays into what you're doing is most people don't really understand surveying. The first thing they say is, are y'all the guy on the side of the road that looks through the scope? And yeah, that's us, but that's just one facet of what we do. The most important thing about surveying is how it ties into making sure the transaction goes through. And there's a lot of things, a lot of hiccups that can happen along that way that you wouldn't even know about. Now, of course, the title itself has its own set of problems, whether people can get funding, whether people have liens that they don't know about, maybe Liz pendings or mechanics liens, or maybe somebody else is actually involved in the ownership and they don't even know about it. When my mom died, we just assumed everything was hers, but my stepfather had died years before. And when we were trying to sell the house, they're like, well, who's Jim Williams? And we're like, oh, that was our stepfather. He died years ago. And they're like, well, does he have any heirs? And now things got real muddy real quick and everything slowed down. Now we had to contact all these heirs and they weren't aware that back when he died, they were supposed to be part of all that. And so here we were years later and everything was on hold until we could track all these heirs down. So that's stuff that happens during title, but during survey. So what we teach now, just so that you know about surveying is about as old as it gets. It's actually biblical. There's references in the Bible to surveying 4 times. So prostitution and surveying go back to the beginning of time. We're elite company there. So the things that can slow things down or look funny on a survey is around the edges of the properties really where the only concern generally is. People like to fight each other over fences, wood decks that got built over, sheds, anything that's around the edges. We call it encroachments, protrusions, and adverse use. Now, most people understand an encroachment. Most people understand a protrusion. Most people don't really understand the term adverse use. Now, you probably have heard the term adverse possession, and that is really as far back as you can go. That comes from English common law. So a lot of the laws that we deal with in surveying come from English common law. And basically, English common law says if you don't care enough about your land to take care of it, then you probably don't deserve it. And there's all kinds of great books I had to read to become a surveyor. And some of them are about stories where they would walk their boundaries with their children and their neighbors, and they'd have these little tea parties. And they would stop and the guy would break his kid's finger on this boundary stone. And it's called beating the bounds. Yeah. So when that old man's dead and his son's in court having this, because back then, if you owned land, you were the gods, and they would say, well, how do you know it's your boundary stone? This is my daddy broke my finger on it when I was 8 years old. I know that's my boundary. That's how serious land was back in the days of the lords and the serfs and all that. And so when that law got brought to America, basically it is, if you don't take care of your land, you could lose it through adverse possession. Now, there are things that have to be adhered to get to that point, open, hostile, notorious. There are things that have to happen, but that does come up in surveying and in land transactions. Easements are a very big deal. Most surveys, you'll see easements on them where people have, utility easements down the side of their property, sanitary sewer easements, different types of easements mostly for your water, your sewer, your cable, all your different things that have to be provided to each home. Some of them have easements, some of them don't. And sometimes people build into those easements. So you're looking at a survey and it has a 7.5 foot, utility easement down the side, but the house is built a half foot into the easement. It's not going to kill your transaction, but they're going to have to deal with that. They're going to have to get the people to sign off on it. They're going to have to say, we're not responsible. Is the city going to cause any problems here, or whatever utility company may own it? And generally 99% of the problems you're going to find on surveys come from the things around the boundary lines. Now, you also have the issue of different opinions of surveys. Several things. Number one, a survey is not public record. It's in the private sector. If I perform a survey, it doesn't get filed anywhere. Y'all get a copy as the realtor or the title company, and no one else. It doesn't get filed anywhere. It's private industry. So people call me all the time and say, where do I get a copy of that survey? Well, you don't. You either get one from the surveyor or you don't get one. So each survey is considered an intellectual opinion of that surveyor. So you go out here and y'all may or may not know much about surveying, but there are iron rods that are driven in the ground at each property corner. Now, take this back in time. What did they use for boundary markers in the 1800s? And even before then, they used a lot of natural stuff when America first started: rivers, blackjack trees, mounds and pits, old boat arc post, stuff like that. And then as we got into the late 1800s, Highland Park and stuff, a lot of 1-inch iron pipes. They now started using buggy axles, car axles. There were a lot of things, that sucker rods from old pumps, cotton spindles. A lot of stuff was used to mark boundaries, but the boundary markers are the gospel. And so what happens is over time, keep in mind, if we back up to when a lot of this stuff was being set, land didn't have the value it has now. Think about in the 1800s, they were just giving it away by the hordes. Here, Moses Austin, take 150 million acres and go settle it, in Texas and fight them Indians and all that. And, so back then, the equipment was kind of, the best they could hope for back then, using ropes to pull distances. And, might be chaining a distance and all of a sudden some rabbits run across where you throw all your stuff down and you got to get lunch. You got to shoot these rabbits. And now you forget, were we at 2,000 feet or 3,000, And so over the history of time, surveying wasn't great until the technology could catch up to it. And so it was, it was decent, but you couldn't really count on things like you can today. And so today we're still dealing with the after effects of some of that, because a lot of the land in Dallas dates back into the 1850s. The original charter in Dallas was 1855. And so a lot of stuff that we are surveying, especially near downtown and Highland Park was incorporated in 1914, but it actually existed before then. So we're looking at old plats and maps and stuff from the 1800s when you're looking at a lot of old Highland Park stuff and a lot of Dallas stuff. You start getting down around Gaston and Jefferson and, all the different places down there where, Jefferson Peak was one of the original founders of Dallas, and his estate was down there, and that's where Jefferson Boulevard came from. So you have a lot of these old plats that are just terrible. And so you're trying to reconstruct land with these plats that have no distances, that you're just doing the best you can from records at the city offices and county offices into your more current stuff that you're seeing today. Of course, all the new plats have all the nice, beautiful bearings and distances and all the beautiful easements, and they're all, really nice. So depending on the area of town you're working on, depending on the age of the area you're working on, depending on the topography of the area, because you've seen areas of Dallas that are just wooded and bamboo and creeks, and that's real tough surveying, and it's real tough getting the boundaries correct. And since there was a period of time where land wasn't worth as much as it is now, there was some subpar surveying because people didn't fight each other over inches back then like they do now. You got people suing each other over a couple of inches now. It's ridiculous. We've had people make us actually shave an inch off of a column at the corner of a property, and it's just absurd, some of the stuff we run into. And some of it has to do with, you have a lot of older generation that had a lot of these homes that were smaller but nice, and now these new age people want to come in, tear it all down, build these 2 stories. They can see into their backyard. They lose their privacy. These are things that people fight over. I don't know if y'all do much down in the area by White Rock Lake. So you have Lakeland and St. Francis and all that down in there. And we have a situation going on right now where a couple's very angry at the surveyor because they're putting this 2-story house up next to their 1-story. They're dropping stuff into the backyard. They're having to put the ladder over there just so they can work on their house because it's a 5-foot side tie, 5-foot setback. Well, you're trying to go up 2 stories. The ladder's got to be 10 feet out just to have enough angle to get up there and work. And these people are going at each other, and the builder's trying to tell them, like that gentleman we were speaking with, the builder's trying to tell them, look, we got to close this thing. And they're like, you ain't closing nothing. You come in my yard again, I'm shooting you. And it's gotten bad, and it's going to go to court. And so I'm going to get drug into that one. I did the survey, but my survey's fine, but I'm going to get drug in anyway because they're fighting over the fence now. And it's just a mess. And so the thing that you look for on a survey would be to see if there's anything protruding over the property line or encroaching onto your property. Now, fences always do. You're never going to see a survey where every fence is perfectly on the line. That's just not going to happen. It's normal for a fence to be 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch. You start getting a couple feet, you get people that start getting excited about that stuff. But this 2, 3, 4 inches, that happens on every job, every fence. What the title company does is just make the buyer sign off on it. We're not responsible. We're not responsible. We're not responsible. And it's kind of like a little checklist, and they call it their exclusions, sign here, sign here, sign here. That's normal stuff. But then you're going to see from time to time where something's really built over, like a neighbor has a fence 5 feet over because they just didn't know where the line was, or the fence builders didn't know where the line was. And that's part of the problem, is a lot of times these fence builders get out there and they don't have a survey. Again, they just find rods and they think they're done. Well, they find out that they used a rod that was a foot over that somebody had set wrong, and the other rod is, so surveyors come and placed one in the right location. They didn't know about it. I've seen houses built to points of curves that should have been built to the property corners. So these monuments exist on every piece of property, and that's what we're out there looking for. Now, what you're going to have is you're going to have some people that are going to call you from time to time and say, that surveyor just dug holes all in my yard. And they're going to be irate, and they're going to be threatening to shoot us and stuff. And unfortunately, we're the redheaded stepchildren here, because I didn't create the situation. I didn't create surveying. I'm not the one that said, hey, I got an idea. Let's put rods in the ground at everybody's property corners so that when we go survey it, we have to dig a hole around this rod to be able to find it and collect the data on it. And so, unfortunately, every yard we go to, we have to dig holes in their yard. And we try to dig a nice round plug with our little sharpshooter and lift it out, and you can see the rod, and we collect the data with our instruments and try to cover it back up. But it doesn't always work that perfectly. Sometimes, especially like in right now, nobody can water enough and your yard just falls apart because it's just dry. And then people are very angry. Their grass dies. We end up paying for a lot of stuff. We end up cutting fiber optic lines that go for people's television, that go for their phones. We cut these lines because these other companies don't care about these property corners, and they'll run the lines right over the top of them. So we get out there with our Sean stats and we start honking. We get a signal. We dig. We cut right through the power, the cable line. Now it's alley and go, heck, they were all watching all my children because everybody's home now and they're pissed off. And they're looking at us like, what'd you just do? And now we got the cable company calling us, telling us it's going to be $400 to fix it. And we're like, oh, great. This happens all the time. You get people upset. So they're going to call y'all, and they're going to start raising heck about the daggum surveyor. He dug holes in my yard. We try to knock on every door. You literally can't knock on every single door. You try to. It just takes forever. People don't. And the worst thing about this pandemic is, before the pandemic, no one was home. We would go in to survey homes and nobody was ever home. We would just get in there, get out, get it done. Nobody said a word. Now you knock on the door, people are freaked out about the world anyway, and they're like, oh no, I don't want you on my yard. No, I don't want you in my backyard. And now they won't even allow us to find the property corners that we have to find. People sick dogs on us, pull guns on us. It's like, guys, y'all don't understand. This has been going on our entire lives, and it's going to keep going on. I didn't create it. I'm just trying to do my job, and I'm trying to make sure that your neighbor can close. And guess what? If it was your house, you would be hoping your neighbor didn't give me this kind of hardship either. But they don't think that way. And so you're going to get some calls about that daggum old surveyors, trespassing, digging holes, and they're going to embellish a lot. They're going to make us sound like we're just the worst criminals in the world. I get calls every day. So I get to play the game with a lot of these people, and y'all will get to play the game as well. It's a lot of fun when you have irate homeowners, and we're just simply trying to do a job. I just play it up now. Yes, when I get that crew, I'm going to fire them, and then they'll back. Because I know crew was simply trying to get this survey done. So we get called back to cover holes every now and then because our crew will forget to cover them. Trying to think of what else y'all really need to look for on a survey. It's mainly it. It's mainly the stuff around the edges. Every now and then you'll get in a situation where the deeds don't make sense or two surveyors don't agree on the boundary. That's really best placed back on the surveyors to get together and work it out. I've got one of those on my desk right now where I'm going to call the other surveyor and see kind of why he did what he did. I will tell you, and y'all cannot repeat this. Now I'm not still online with any builders, am I? Okay, good. Builders can be very, I'll just say it, shady. And they're not doing it in an intentional bad way. They'll go out there and they'll see this fence and they'll just tear it down real quick and start building a new one and go, oh, we didn't know it was yours. Well, the people are going to get a new fence. But they know that if they went to those people and said, hey, we want to tear this down and build a new one, they're going, oh, no, I don't want you to do that. And then they're stuck with this old fence when they want to put up a new one. Happens all the time. And their intent isn't necessarily bad. They just want a new fence put up. And they know if they ask the people next door, they're probably going to say, I don't know. So you'll get into some of that too. There's a lot of really good builders out there. And then there's some that, or whatever. A lot of people have tried to blackmail me different ways, or not blackmail, but extort me. Hey, I'll give you X amount if you could just make sure this isn't over the building line. I'm like, no, it's going to be where it is. I'm sorry. Most of them are on the up and up, but any profession is going to have a certain amount of that in it. So any questions from anyone?
Yeah, John, let's talk for just a second about pricing.
Okay.
After my first couple of years in business, because most of my surveys were all residential, and I guess they weren't that different types of residential, you have a dollar sign in your mind that it's usually $400, $500, $600. In this business, thinking about our clients' expenditures is a big deal. And so it's very easy, I think, for a lot of agents to just have that dollar sign in their mind that's the general amount of money for a survey. Well, then obviously the last year or two, I've seen some other situations where maybe the lot was bigger, maybe it was more rural, and all of a sudden the price was $700 or $800 more than I would have thought it would have been. Then you're going back to your client saying, well, it's going to be a little more than what I thought it was. Or just recently, I was asking you about a commercial property here in Mesquite, and first thing you asked me was, is it old part of Mesquite? Which part of Mesquite? And it is in the old part of Mesquite. And you were explaining how that's a much more difficult survey because I guess the boundaries are older, et cetera. So touch base a little bit on what agents should be thinking about when they're dealing with their clients about pricing of surveys, because it's very easy for us to think, oh, the title company handles all that stuff. Well, title company does in terms of ordering the survey, but no one may come tell our clients till the day of closing, your survey was $1,400.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Why is it that much? So if you could touch on that.
Sure. So all of y'all have seen basic residential lots that are, let's say, 70 by 120, don't have anything on them but a house. You got a beautiful concrete alley behind them. Maybe they got a little shed in the back. That takes a survey crew about 2.5 hours. Now, survey crews predominantly are about $150 an hour. So Driving an all crew is going to spend 3 hours out there. That's $450 plus drafting. Typical easy residential surveys are around 450 to 550, somewhere in that range. They used to be cheaper, but they should have gone up a long time ago because the cost of surveying equipment has skyrocketed like all technology has. And so it's just the price of the iron rods we set in the ground has doubled. All the wood that we use has doubled. Everything has just gone so far up that surveys had to go up. Now, as far as each individual survey, that have alleys, and y'all know alleys. So when I go out to a property that has an alley, I know that my crew will be able to go through the gate, walk up and down the alley, and find the property corners of the neighbors. But if it doesn't have an alley, now we have to drive to the street behind you, knock on those people's doors, because we're about to have to jump these fences and look for these property corners. Now we're going to have to drive around. We're going to have to knock on each door and say, hey, we're going to be jumping into your backyard. Please don't shoot us. We're surveyors. We're surveying the people behind you. And that's where we get into the whole hassle of, no, don't go in my backyard and stuff like that. But just the fact that we have to go around there, now you've already added 30, 45 minutes to an hour to that job. Now you also have situations where you have big cul-de-sac lots or a larger lot that the guy has, 3 sheds, a swimming pool, bamboo everywhere. Now you're getting into some, it all has to do with how long is the crew going to be there to try to accomplish the goal. Now you get out here into Kaufman and you're looking at these big, large country lots with asphalt streets, much harder to put the boundaries together, much more ground to cover. You get out here into some of these stuff out here and not so far out, just 20 miles out, you can get into these big country lots. So if your lot's an acre but there's nothing but a house on it, well, that's easy. The house is easy. But now I'm having to walk an acre that way and an acre the other way and an acre behind you. I mean, I'm having to cover 4 or 5 acres just to get the property corners, because a good surveyor is going to find the property corners of every property that touches his property. If he does not, he runs the risk of getting sued. Any line that touches your line can be a lawsuit. You have to make sure you satisfy everybody around you as well as yourself, because in a platted scenario, everybody gets the same amount of land, whatever the plat says. Our job is to put the deed or the plat back on the ground. And if there happens to be a conflict, our job on the survey is to show the conflict. Now, they say as a surveyor, we are quasi-judicial, which just means we've learned enough about the law to make an opinion based upon what we've learned. But we are not lawyers. I tell my people all the time, people call me all the time, well, whose fence is it? Where something is a matter of fact. Who owns it is a matter of law. And people don't understand that. If I build my fence 2 feet on your property, I still own it. You tear it down, you're going to pay me. Even though it was on your property, I didn't intentionally put it on your property and I own it. And people say, well, it's on a fence or else that gets put over a property line. So you have to make sure each person's deed or platted lot has what it's supposed to have. Now, there will be times where everybody has built to these certain monuments and they're half a foot short. So let's say it's an 80-foot lot and you get a survey that says 80-foot plat, 79.5 measured. That's because the surveyor made the decision that everybody had acquiesced to these monuments that were found and had built to them. And if we decide to go over the other half a foot, now we're putting a neighbor's brand new wooden fence over on this people's property. Well, that's not equitable justice either. So all of that comes into play when you're pricing a survey as far as how large it is, what the terrain is like. Y'all have all seen these lots that have creeks on the back. You've seen lots in older parts of town that are just extremely grown up. You can have a 1 acre tract right out here in Kaufman that you think is just a residential house, and it is, but you've got it's got deeds that are terrible. They got a creek cutting through the middle of it. It's wooded down all the lines. We're going to chop line with a machete. It'll probably take a crew 6, 7, 8 hours. So here you've got this little old house sitting on this acre lot, but we're going to be 10 hours on the job, and that's $1,200 in field time plus drafting. You got to write a legal description. That's a $1,500 job, but the house is small, just like you would see on a regular residential lot. So it all comes down to topography, terrain, age. There are parts of Dallas that you do not want to survey in that are just horrible, horrible surveying. There are parts of Mesquite that are horrible surveying. Old Mesquite, anytime when you start saying the word walnut, ash, pecan, you get around any old original, Mesquite dates into the 1800s. What are you going to find? How bad is it? How long has this stuff been there? the older, the harder generally. And especially when you're talking about old areas of original downtowns and stuff like that. It's just, some of it's just horrible, horrible surveying. Keep in mind, when these places were built, there were no concrete streets. There were no streets at all. You had horse and buggy, you had dirt roads. That's how old Mesquite is. And that's how old almost all these towns are. This is back way, way before automobiles, way, way before, paved streets. Even before the brick paved streets, these were dirt streets. And so think about trying how that is, transgressed on up to today's time. What were the deeds like back then? And there's a lot of old plats that are so bad, they don't even have distances on some of them. So you're literally out there trying to set up these boundaries by doing street right of ways, which is what we do in Old Mesquite a lot, is we have to figure out where these street right of ways are. And sometimes they're just all over the place and it's a mess. Now, sometimes you'll get into old downtown Mesquite and you'll get a deed and it'll read real nice and call for iron rods at all the corners, or maybe it's been replatted, whole different animal, makes it so much easier. You start reading deeds where they say to a stake in a prairie and you're like, what? So some of the stuff we read is terrible and some of it's decent. Sometimes you get a legal description that doesn't even have all the calls. They left a few out. Now you're like, oh, great. So a lot of things go into what a surveyor looks at when he's trying to decide what a lot should cost. Now, all of your typical residential stuff that's been built, let's say from the 70s and forward, generally is about the same. Depending on, there's some areas of Irving, there's some areas of Dallas, there's some areas of Mesquite that are just really, really bad surveying. And if you've been doing this any length of time like I have, then those areas and what you can be up against. You don't want to survey in MapSco 55 south of downtown Dallas and MapSco 56. These are just horrible areas that haven't had good surveying. You end up having to do the entire block just to get one survey done, and it's just terrible. We've seen them where they've got fences 15 feet over on the neighbor's property, and somebody's driven an iron rod by the fence, and the guy's saying, hey, you come on my land, I'll shoot you. And we're like, oh, okay. So that situation was a Dallas Area Habitat house, and I called Imogene Hanby at Dallas Area Habitat, and I said, he's built 15 feet over on you. She goes, well, I can put a product on the 35-foot lot. I'm like, yeah, but what do I do? I'm the surveyor. How do I describe it? I mean, you're just going to give this guy 15 feet so you don't end up in a lawsuit, but what do I do? So anyway, so surveying pricing is based on topography, terrain, age, area. 80% of them, or let's say 70% of surveys are pretty cut and dry. That other 30 can be all over the board. Does that answer your question?
It does. I think it's a good reminder for all of us when we are in that process. If our client, seller or buyer, is purchasing a survey, and I never thought about this till the last year or so, it might be a good idea, just like we would inquire about other costs for our client. Might be a good idea to stay in touch with that escrow officer at title and just say, hey, keep me in the loop about what kind of cost there might be on that survey, because the last thing we want is for our client thinking it's going to be $500-$600 and it winds up being $1,200. So not that we could necessarily stop that, but it's good that our people know what to expect and not be shocked. So
sure. And if you think about Peachtree Lane, right? Most of y'all probably familiar with Peachtree. Well, literally just a mile north of there, you've got nice curb and gutter subdivisions that have nice chain link fences. They're old, but they're still, everything's cut and dry. But now you get right down here on Peachtree, it's asphalt streets. These lots are 300 feet deep. It's just horrible surveying. You just never know what you're going to find. And so you can have bad areas right next to really good areas. So go ahead.
Any other questions?
Inquiring minds want to know.
I think Kim's right there. There's Kim.
I may have missed this. That wouldn't be unheard of. Your areas are just DFW, or do you go to Kaufman County? Do you go to Rockwall County?
We go to every county that touches Dallas. In specific instances, I have a few engineering clients that want us to go. I've been sent all the way to Cactus City, all the way to Amarillo. I have one client that builds Family Dollars and we go all over Texas, but he's willing to pay the price. See, you don't really want to hire a Dallas surveyor to go to Weatherford. No. I get called from our regular clients. What they don't understand is just the drive alone, you're going to add 2 or 3 hours of driving for a field crew. So the cost of going out there is just not smart for residential survey. Now, if you're talking 5-10 acres, that's different. But when you're looking at a typical residential survey that's $500-$700, well, you can't add $400 worth of driving and expect it. It's going to be a $900, $1,100 survey for something that you could have got for $500 if you had a local surveyor. So the further out you have to go, the crew's going to eat up half a day on something they could have done in 2 hours locally. It's all about time.
Right. For us in our world, it's Kaufman, Dallas, Kaufman, Rockwall,
Yeah, I got you.
Collin County.
Yeah, it's horrible for us. We go out to Louisville because it touches Dallas, and we go to Denton, and those are terrible for us. And we just have to hope we get more than one out in that area because of the drive. We have one client that asked us to do a little box lot in Sanger. I'm like, it's going to be an $800 survey. If you want to do that, that's fine. But you probably can get somebody in Sanger to do it for $450 or $500. And I don't try to wait business, but I want to do the right thing for my client as well.
Right.
So I do brief my clients a lot. Like, this isn't smart to hire me to go do this if you can find somebody local. So I know y'all's out here by where we are, and do understand when you start saying the word Kaufman, unless it's the newer subdivisions, Kaufman is brutal surveying. Most of it's meets and bounds. Most of it's old. There's a million easements that are on the properties out there. I don't know if it's from all the oil and gas. Kaufman tends to be just brutal compared to Forney's pretty decent. There's areas of Forney that are bad. Mesquite, most of it's good. But once you start getting out in the Kaufman, Seagoville, Seagoville's got some just terrible, terrible surveying in it. So those are things to be taken into account when you start talking about Kaufman, Kemp, Seagoville. You can get into some real bad surveying out there. It's going to be more expensive for sure. It's just tough surveying.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
How far booked out are you?
On regular residential lots, we're probably 2 weeks. On commercial stuff like that, we're probably 4 weeks. Yeah, everybody got hit so hard. Trying to stay up has been rough. It's been rough.
Thank you.
But what a good sign that you are busy. I mean, I think that's another indication for all of us that while the market's a little funky and a little bit different, business is still continuing to move forward in real estate.
That is true. The indications are that it's going to do okay. It's hard to say at this point whether it's going to fluctuate too far down or too far up. So, but we've been pretty slammed. Yeah.
Sharon, when we get done today, would you mind setting up just a follow-up email to remind everybody that, number one, they can go look at this on the recorded YouTube, but also maybe include John's information, because John really has been a blessing to us at the last minute before we needed something. So I'd love for all of our agents to have access to him, because again, sometimes there's situations where, we're not necessarily dealing with a title company and we need a survey for our client at the last minute or something. So I'd love for Rebecca to have his contact.
Or if you have questions on a survey, let's say that one of your clients presents you with a survey and you think that with it, I'll be honest with you, I don't get to survey much anymore because I'm basically an office prostitute now, right? I'm stuck in the desk in the office solving problems. And so some of the joy of my life is when I get to see a boundary problem or a conflict and get to help people resolve it. That's the only real survey that I get to do anymore. So feel free if you need to send something over and go, hey, I don't get this or I don't understand it.
That's great.
Hey, that's some of the only joy I have left in myself.
We love having those kinds of partnerships. We really do. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so Sharon, were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying yes to what you asked, and thank you, John, for being available.
Absolutely.
John, thank you for your time today. Thank you for partnering with us. I hope we can partner with y'all a little bit more. Now, tell us about A&W. How did that come about?
Okay, so 1989, Scott Anderson and Phil Wiley opened A&W Surveyors. Phil Wiley was registered. Scott was in the process of getting registered. Scott got registered in 1990. They had a philosophical difference in business. Phil wanted to go do one survey a day and then drink a little beer and watch the Cowboys. Scott wanted to be a very successful businessman. So they made a decision. Do you want the business or the money? Phil wanted the money. Scott kept the business. And from there, he just started growing it. Scott who's about there. and he was trained extremely well on boundary surveying. We're a small firm. There's only 18 of us. We stay at 4 crews. We can compete against all these companies that have 20, 30 crews, the CBGs and the Burns that, do sub-quality work because they're trying to just mass produce work and make tons of money. I'm a capitalist, but we're just too anal here. We do really good surveying. 5 people under Scott got registered. I'm one of them. I came here years ago. I came here 30 years ago as a rodman making $6.50 an hour. And Scott trained me all the way up to pass my state exam. In 1990, first part. In 98, I passed the second part. I aced the second part. I got a 94 on it. And from that, I got a lot of calls to train people how to take the state exam. And I take a lot of pride in my surveying. I love surveying. I'm a student of surveying. And I've tried to learn everything I can possibly learn. I get a lot of calls around town from people wanting me to look at boundary issues and adverse possession issues and stuff. I've been expert witness several times. I just love surveying that much. It's what I do.
Well, I appreciate what you do. I think we all do. As you know, my youngest works in the business, and when he first got in the business, and most of you who know me know I'm a student of history, and I used to always say, George Washington was a surveyor. Yep. And in fact, most people don't know that George Washington actually physically himself surveyed much of what today is Washington, D.C. So as you said, it comes from biblical times. It's an honorable profession and one that relates a lot to what we all do in this industry. And we're getting speakers like John because we need to understand more about what title companies do, what lenders do, what home inspectors do, what surveyors do, because it all relates back to what we do. The better we understand their jobs, the better we can serve our clients. So if there's no other questions, and John, thank you again. Thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm always there for you.
Next Tuesday night, 7 p.m., dinner at the Forney office. Brooks Kelly with, what's his name of his company now? Kim, I can't remember.
Mortgage Link.
Mortgage Link. He always provides us some tremendous training and information to help us serve our clients better. He'll be with us next Tuesday night at the Forney office at 7 p.m. If you know someone interested in getting into real estate, bring them with you, because that's always a great time to bring in prospective future real estate agents. Anything else, Kim or Sharon, before we sign out today?
I think we've covered it.
All right. Y'all all have a very blessed day.
Thank you,
John.
John.
Thank you.
God bless you all. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you all for joining.